Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. Halloween is coming on as we say hello to November and a new week of podcasts. So thanks for popping in to get your fix on all that's going down in sports, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with your host, JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, even as early as this past Thursday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And now we could close the door on a baseball season. We could focus in on the fall and winter sports. And before I even touch on that, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes I want to begin with. Number one, I want to thank those who watched or listened to Thursday's podcast because it was very unconventional. I actually had to record it in the front seat of my car, outdoors with the elements and rain, and it was a bit messy, to say the least. So for those who are probably wondering what the hell happened, what was going on, and everything is all right in my world, all is fine, but I do want to thank you for those who sat through it, listened through the whole thing. As you can see, I'm back at the sports desk for the first time on a Monday in almost a month, and hey, it does feel good to be back, but it doesn't matter. Just goes to show you that whether I'm in a vehicle or in the living room, bedroom, or maybe even on a rooftop, or even in the past, outdoors on a patio by the poolside, it doesn't matter. You know that I'm always going to be present. I'm always going to deliver my takes on what's happening in sports in a credible and entertaining fashion. So nothing's going to stop me, as I'm sure you saw there on Thursday, which was a bit of a curve or a left turn. But nevertheless, I just want to thank and acknowledge those who did watch, and I appreciate you for sticking with me, even in a time where, it wasn't the most pleasant or maybe the best of conditions to record and post a podcast. So that's number one. Number two, I got to shout out a very good friend of mine, John Irving, who's celebrating a birthday today. I believe, let me think. Yes, so that would be Carl Banks, Jack Lambert. I got to think of other famous 58s. Baseball, not really any 58s there. But anyway, shout out to you, John. He's one of my lifelong friends. I've known him now 40 years. So happy birthday to you, my man. Much love always. And may you celebrate many, many more. Just had to get that out the way. So let's get to it. When we look back on a World Series that a lot of people, as of this very moment, still riding off the high of what had taken place in Toronto Friday and Saturday night, to where the prisoners of the moment, they're going to come out and say that, oh, this was the best World Series ever. Oh, this is the best Game 7, etc. Oh, what theater, what drama. Yes, there was that. But as I use that as a prelude when we talk about Game 7s of World Series and best World Series ever, I'm going to put that on hold for a moment because you know I'm going to discuss it. But when we look at these two games and look at this series on a whole, it is one that we'll look back on as dramatic, fascinating from the standpoint of it was almost a seesaw when you take a look at what had happened, whether it would be Game 1, the blowout, where the Blue Jays went going away and certainly gave the Dodgers something to think about. Or Game 2, after the pitcher's duel between Kevin Gausman and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, retiring batters left and right, but the Dodgers breaking it open in the 7th inning on the home runs there by Max Muncy, and I believe it was Will Smith there? It should have been. I believe it was Will Smith. The 2 home runs there that put the Dodgers even in the World Series. And we know about Game 3. The 18-inning epic game that we saw, one of the great baseball games, especially in the first 12 innings. I know it got a little flat there from innings 13 on, but still, it's going to be remembered forever. And then with the Blue Jays down 2-1, you had a situation where, can they get one of the next 2 and at least go back to Toronto, whether they're trailing 3-2 or up 3-2? And when we last met, the Blue Jays won those 2 games, 4-5 at Dodger Stadium, and both in a fashion where it was close early, and then in the later innings, they were able to pull away and win the game outright. No theater, no suspense, no intrigue, to where we thought, what would game 6 and 7 look like? And as it was for game number 6, where you had Kevin Gossman and Yoshinobu Yamamoto going at it again, and after the 3-run third, to where Mookie Betts, who is having an awful series at the plate, was able to drive in 2 runs and 2 big runs as it turned out. So the Dodgers had a 3-0 lead, and then the Blue Jays answered with a run at the bottom of the inning, which is always huge when a team scores first. You always want to answer back. Or in a case where the Blue Jays had to answer a crooked number by the Dodgers, and you get that 1 run back, it all gives you a good vibe, gives you a good sense that, okay, we're in the game, there's still 6 more innings to go. And as the way the game unfolded, there weren't a ton of opportunities. It was a situation where you were kind of waiting to see whether or not the Dodgers were going to extend their lead or the Blue Jays were going to come roaring back or at least make it close. And as we saw there, when we get to the 9th inning in particular, how the Blue Jays get the leadoff walk, and then on top of that, you get the double by Barger, where it landed and lodged at the base of the wall. And for whatever reason, not that I'm watching every podcast or channel or radio station where they've talked about various plays or various moments in a game, and in this particular case, with the way Game 6 ended, but for whatever reason, either that play got forgotten or swept under the rug. I mean, who knows? Because for Barger to get that double, that on the fly, lodged into the bottom of the left center field warning track, and for that to be called a ground rule double, that to me, by far, and I understand how everything unfolded after that, but if that ball did not get stuck, and if that just bounced, and who knows what direction, it probably would have carried him right back to the center fielder there, but that run scores. It's 3-2 with Barger on second. And who knows how that inning unfolds. So we had second and third, nobody out. Tyler Glasnow comes in, and then you had Ernie Clement, who on the first pitch hits a soft loop to Freeman, makes the catch. And then 2 pitches after that, where Andres Jimenez hits a flare into left center, and you're thinking, oh my God, the game's going to be tied here, or at least 3-2. All of a sudden, flying into the screen is Kike Hernandez, makes the play, and you thought to yourself, well, there's no way that run's going to score because he has all the momentum coming in to where if the runner on third straw, if he even attempted to try to get to home, he would have been out by 40 feet. But as it was, Hernandez had the instinct to throw to second base and one-hop the throw to Miguel Rojas, and that's a name that's going to come up here in a matter of moments, where he was off balance, made the play, and Barger's out at second. Game over. Series tied. And Barger, that was a terrible base running mistake. How he was way off the bag there. Now, I understand. Off the bat, broken bat, you're going to turn your back. You're going to see where the ball may land. But if you're seeing Hernandez streak in as the ball's sailing over your head, you have to go back to second base. He must have been at least halfway between second and third. Who knows, maybe even 2/3 of the way for all I know, but he had to be halfway there. But he had to have the wherewithal to say, wait a second, this ball could drop. But the minute you see Hernandez just streaking in, he had to break for second. I mean, what was he doing in no man's land? So that was a complete, just utter awful way to end that game. And the Dodgers, they made the play when they had to. And Rojas, again, on his heels, to have to scoop that ball and make sure that he secured it in the glove. Not an easy play. And understand it wasn't a backhand scoop, but still, when you're trying to corral that ball, which almost handcuffed him, and to make that play, I mean, that's as good as it gets. And then you fast forward to Game 7, where Bo Bichette, after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gets walked, and then Bichette takes Shohei Ohtani dead center, and it takes a while to get out of the batter's box, 3-0, and you're thinking, oh, geez, The party is underway in the 416. But like good teams always do, they chip away. And chip, and chip. All right, 3-1, then 3-2. Then the Blue Jays get that big run to make it 4-2, and you're thinking, all right, well, maybe, just maybe. Then Muncy in the 8th inning hits the home run to make it 4-3, and then now this is where things really start. I don't want to say fester, but this is where things really start to build up. And fester will be in a moment. Where the Blue Jays, who have had opportunities, men left on base, and I even want to chronicle this in the right way because when I think back on it, it was so much that happened in those final few innings that you have to detail it almost pitch by pitch. And for the way this game unfolded, especially from that point on, when Muncy hit the home run there to make it 4-3, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, let's see if the Blue Jays could get any type of insurance. And when you get to that bottom of the 8th inning, as I pull it up here, you had Emmett Sheehan come in. Right away, Ernie Clement doubles to left. And then you get to the almost top of the order because then Jimenez comes in where Blake Snell now comes in relief. And Jimenez lined out to third. And then you have top of the order with George Springer and then Davis Schneider. And then Springer, who, as we all know, flair for the dramatic. We saw it in Game 7 against Seattle. On top of many moments in the past, especially when he was a member of the Astros. And then he strikes out. And then Schneider came in to pinch hit for Nathan Lucas, which I understand left on left, so Schneider comes in. And then he strikes out swinging. So now you have a scenario where opportunity, leadoff double, couldn't bring him in. And now you get to the 9th inning. And you have Kike Hernandez who strikes out. And you're thinking, all right, fine. And then you have the at-bat where a lot of people are going to look at as a guy, and there's always one, very seldom, because everybody expects the big star to always deliver in the clutch or in the pinch. And here's a guy who has been a lifelong Miami Marlin, got to the Dodgers there, I believe, beginning of last year, and one who's a utility player, veteran presence. I understand he doesn't know his way around winning, despite the fact that he's been in the major leagues. Geez. I think going as far back as 2015. And nobody's going to confuse Miguel Rojas for Nomar Garciaparra. Or Derek Jeter, for that matter, his former boss there down in Miami. And he gets up there, 1 out, and gets to a 3-2 count, and he hits a hanging slider. And when the ball went off the bat, I thought to myself, I said, ooh, it didn't look right off the bat like, oh, that's going to be gone. But you kind of thought that this is going to be extra bases. It's going to carry over the left fielder's head. But as soon as that camera angle switched and that ball just kept carrying and going, and you thought to yourself, I can't believe this guy just hit a home run. The most unlikely of heroes. The guy that if you looked up and down their roster, and even as awful as Andy Pages, and I'm going to get to him in a second, had been awful, had some power, 28 homers in the regular season. This is the one guy, Miguel Rojas, you didn't think was going to beat you in any way, shape, or form. And for Hoffman to hang that pitch, and for Rojas, who hit 7 home runs in the regular season, so it's not as if he's a guy that only hits about 1 or 2 home runs a year. But again, nobody's going to confuse Rojas with Shohei Ohtani as far as the power department goes. And for him to hit that home run, and I sat there and I thought to myself, are the Dodgers going to win this World Series? And that was the first thing that crept in my head. Because then now you get to the bottom of the 9th inning. And with Guerrero flying out the center and Bichette getting the base hit, and he had to get pinch run because we know about Bichette's knee. And then they load the bases where Barger gets walked and Alejandro Kirk gets hit by a pitch. And then you have the situation, and mind you that early in the game, you had the benches cleared with Jimenez and, what was it, Justin Robleski. And listen, I don't know what Jimenez was thinking at first, on the previous pitch, I think it was a 0-2 pitch, where the ball was up, and it looked like he tried to purposely get hit because the way he moved his wrist toward the pitch, and the next pitch he goes up and in and gets hit on the wrist, on the pad I might add, and then Jimenez opens his arms, benches, dugouts, bullpens, everything clear. But for then Kirk to get hit there, and to me, I thought that was much ado about nothing with the whole brawl. What was Jimenez doing? I found that kind of odd. But anyway, so now you had the bases loaded, and Dalton Varsho shows up. But in the process, where you have Yamamoto coming to game at this point, because you got to remember, Snell was in, Yamamoto comes in now from the bullpen, and mind you, the night before, 96 pitches, won the game, 2-0 in the series at that point, and here he is, bottom of the ninth inning, on no day's rest, or you want to say 1 day's rest. Doesn't even count. So for Varsho then to hit the ground ball to second, and there goes Miguel Rojas again, back on his heels as he tries to corral the ball. It was to his right, and as he gains his balance and is trying to make a throw to home, because that's really his only play. The infield is in. You're not trying to get the double play there, even though there is one out. He goes home. Will Smith, who at first had to get off the plate because the ball's a little bit high, and as Kiner Falefa goes in to the plate, he slides. Will Smith comes back down on the plate literally a nanosecond before Kiner Falefa, who would have won the game and won the World Series, is out. And now you have a situation where Ernie Clement, who's had 1 million hits in this postseason, actually 30 for a playoff record. And what happens? He takes the first pitch. I thought he should have taken a pitch there. And that ball was down and low, and he golfed it. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, here's a scenario where it's just a can of corn in left field. But now here's where it gets interesting. During the pitching change where Yamamoto comes in and Dave Roberts decides to summon Andy Pages, as I mentioned, has not hit a lick this postseason. His average is below 100. I think he was batting like 50, which is, I mean, I could bat 50 and if I was in a major league uniform. So he puts in Pages for a defensive replacement. And here it was. Clement golfs this fly ball deep to left field. Enrique Hernandez is going back. It looks like he was going to pull a Willie Mays over the shoulder, and it looked like it was in line for him to catch. And then Pages, all of a sudden, intercepts with his big frame, crashes into Hernandez. He goes into the fence or to the wall as Pages secures the catch. Extra innings, game tied. Blue Jays don't score. And then you have a situation in the top of the 10th where the Blue Jays were in a pickle. Seranthony Dominguez, bases loaded, 1 out, in all kinds of trouble, and is able to get out of it. Well, they force out at home, and then a play which was, I believe it was a comeback, wasn't it, off the top of my head? No, it was a ground out to first where Seranthony Dominguez had the cover. They had to review it. He was out. No problem. And then you get to the top of the 11th, 2 outs. Shane Bieber, and I believe he only threw about 3 pitches. Let me see, Rojas, 2 pitches there, and then Ohtani, 3 pitches. Until he gets to Will Smith. And he's behind in the count 2-0, hangs that slider over the wall, 5-4, and now you think to yourself, okay, the Dodgers have the lead. Is Yamamoto going to come out to pitch at 3rd inning? All this stuff. When Freeman was up, he ground out to short. So he goes out there. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is your first batter in the bottom of the 11th. All he does, rings a double down the line on a pitch that was high and tight. No one else could have hit that pitch. Doubles down the line. Next guy up is Kiner Falefa. He bunts. And that's the one thing I didn't talk about. When Kiner Falefa, there was a lot of talk about him not having a big lead at 3rd on that play at the plate there in the bottom of the 9th inning. And in real time, I didn't see that, but when I watched the replay, I said, why wasn't he off the bag where he probably could have tried to at least maybe get Yamamoto off to maybe balk. But in the postgame, he was only about 5 to 7 feet off the bag at third because he didn't want to get doubled up. And I'm sure that was triggered because of what happened the night before where Barja got doubled up there in Game 6 with Kike Hernandez. So Falefa lays down a great bunt. Guerrero goes to third. And then now you have a situation where Barja walks and you have first and third with Alejandro Kirk coming up. And I understand you could even argue whether or not Kirk should be up in that spot because he's an automatic double play ball. But the guy had 2 hits. The guy's been game the whole postseason. And Yamamoto shatters his bat, grounds into a 5-3 double play. World Series over. Ball game over. And the Dodgers repeat. And I'm going to start with the Dodgers first, and I'll go through everything before I get to the Blue Jays. Back-to-back. First time it's happened, as we all know. You've seen it a million times since the 98 to 2000 Yankees. Their DNA showed up when it absolutely had to. From the play with Kike Hernandez to Miguel Rojas. From the stick-to-itiveness, down 3-0, down 3-1, 3-2, 4-2, 4-3, tie the game, take the lead, get out of traffic, gutty performance, an all-timer there by Yamamoto, along the likes of Randy Johnson in 0-1, even Madison Bumgarner. And I know he had 2 days rest, but come on. Madison Bumgarner came into a Game 7 in the 5th inning, pitched 5, not scoreless, 5 no-hit innings. That Yamamoto performance goes up with that. Enough said. I mean, hands down. And of course, he is your MVP. But their DNA, their experience, their grit, their toughness was displayed pretty much from the 9th inning of Game 6 throughout the 11 innings in Game 7. And all you do is you tip your cap. Dave Roberts puts the right button with Pages. If he didn't, maybe Hernandez catches that ball, but maybe it doesn't. And they lose the World Series on that play. And then Dave Roberts would have to sit all off season thinking that I should have put in Pages in the game at that play, at that time. Now, as far as the historical reference, let's start with Game 7. People are, oh, the best Game 7 ever. This. Listen, it's up there, without question. But there are 2 Game 7s that, to me, in my eyes, from what I've seen throughout watching baseball throughout my life, that were better. 2001 World Series, Arizona and the Yankees. Clemens versus Schilling, a pitcher's duel. Clemens goes into the 7th inning. I believe 7th. Maybe it was the 8th, but 7th. 10 strikeouts. Schilling is pitching on 3 days rest again, where he felt the best pitch he threw in that game was a changeup. I believe it was a change to Alfonso Soriano, and he hit it over the wall to make it 2-1 in the top of the 8th. And then Mariano strikes out the side in the bottom of the 8th, and then we know what happened in the 9th. The error by Mariano, the Luis Gonzalez hit, thwarts the 4-peat, if there's such a thing. Yankees are going for 4 straight World Series and 5 of 6, and they win that game in dramatic fashion. And then 1991, how could you forget that Game 7? Jack Morris pitches 10 innings in a 1-0 pitcher's duel where Gene Larkin, sacrifice fly, wins the game. Twins win the World Series. How could you forget Game 7, 97? Indians-Marlins, where the Marlins tied it in the 9th on a Craig Counsell sac fly, and then Edgar Renteria, I believe, in the 11th, where the Indians were trying to get their first World Series since 1948. And then, of course, how could you even forget, when you think about it, from the Indian standpoint now, of course, the Guardians. 2016, where the Indians were down 6-3 in the 8th inning, where Aroldis Chapman was pitching on fumes. Rajai Davis, similar to Miguel Rojas. I understand they lost, but that name will be forever remembered in World Series history. An unlikely guy to a game-tying 3-run homer in the bottom of the 8th inning. And then, mind you, the game went into extra innings in the middle of a rain delay. Cubs, they have not won since 1908. Indians have not won since 1948. And now you have a rain delay to delay the inevitable? The Cubs score 2 in the, I believe it was top of the 10th. And then in the bottom of the 10th, the Indians tie. And they actually, I believe, had bases loaded. And I forgot who the hitter was. I think his name was Melendez. But it hit a weak ground in the third. Chris Bryant picks it up, throws it to Rizzo, out at first when the game was 8-7, and the Cubs win. You mean to tell me those Game 7s weren't as good as, or not better than the Game 7 that we saw Saturday night? That's why I can't rank it. And that's why I talked about at the beginning, the prisoner of the moment. Everybody wants to look at this as the best Game 7 ever. Everybody wants to look at this as the best World Series ever. So to me, it's up there. It may be ranked third. Maybe. But it's definitely up there. If you want to say top 5, top 3, fine. Is it the best ever? I don't think so. Because I just mentioned, I gave you 4 examples. I mean, you can pick any one of those out of the hat. So, and I actually think those games, I think the Arizona Yankee and the Twins Braves were better than Dodgers Blue Jays. And as far as the best World Series ever, it was not. The best World Series I've seen was Atlanta, Minnesota. Because you had 5 of the 7 games decided by 1 run. The last 2, both in extra innings, the Kirby Puckett walk-off, Charlie Liebrandt, and then we'll see tomorrow night, the Jack Buck call, and then, as I mentioned, Game 7 with Jack Morris. It doesn't get any better than that. I understand it's not sexy, it's not New York, LA, it's not Boston, Philly, it's Atlanta, Minnesota. But that series was just, I mean, come on, you can't get any better than that. And this series is going to rank up there too. Now, for everything that I mentioned, games 1, 4, and 5, not great. Game 3, we understand all-timer. Game 6, the ending was great. And Game 7 is an all-timer. It's a classic. Without question. It's definitely one of the best Game 7s ever. Is it the best Game 7? I won't say that. I would say it would probably be as high as 3 in my eyes. And you want to even talk about Bill Mazeroski? You want to even go way back to 1960, a walk-off homer in a Game 7? Now, I understand there weren't many people alive to watch that, but a walk-off Game 7 homer, that is literally once in a lifetime. And that score was 9-8, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a back and forth, tooth and nail, and that was the Pirates, who were a heavy underdog going into that series. So you can even throw that game in the mix, and that probably deserves to be number 1 based on it deciding on the final at-bat of the game. So that's how I look at this World Series. And the Dodgers, listen, they're not a dynasty. People are going to write, oh, they won 3 and 6, blah, blah. They win next year, they stamp themselves as a dynasty. Right now, I can't say that. Not me. And you know I'm a hard marker when it comes to that stuff. But listen, that team is built to win multiple World Series. And they're already the betting favorite to go back to win the World Series next year. So until they do that, they're a dynasty. Right now, not yet. At all. And I mean, when you think about this team, it's just amazing what they've been able to do here, despite the fact that people could look at this as an all-time team, which right now I won't, because their regular season record, they were a 3 seed. And, well, let me take that back. Yeah, they were a 3 seed. And this is a team that Vegas had them at 104.5 as far as the over and the win totals. And they were, think about it, 12 short. And I get it, 11, we'll say 10.5 short. Or 11.5 short. But I can't consider them an all-time great team, even though it's on a coming second of a back-to-back. But despite them winning it in the fashion that they did, I can't look at them as the 98 Yankees or the 75-76 Reds, or you name any team you want. You want to go back to the Murderers Row Yankees, you want to go back to maybe even 86 Mets. I don't think they're in that 84 Tigers. I don't think they're in that pantheon. Now, if they come back next year and they have a big season and win 102, 103 games and win a World Series, then you can say that. Right now, I won't. Now I got to talk about the Blue Jays. If you're a Jays fan, I'm sure you haven't slept. I'm sure you haven't even eaten. Because I know if I was a Blue Jay fan, I'd still be sick to my stomach. And it wasn't anything that the Dodgers did. It was what the Blue Jays didn't do. They could not get the big hit. They could not get the timely hit. And we know in October, it's all about pitching and timely hitting. The 8th inning, the double Clement left him stranded. The 9th inning, had a chance to win the game. If kind of Falefa was maybe off the bag, instead of 5 to 7 feet, maybe it was 8 to 10 feet. Slid in safely, they win a World Series. Or if Pajes wasn't in center field, they probably would have won then. Or the double by Guerrero to lead off the 9th, or the 11th, excuse me, and unable to bring him in. Barger, the boneheaded play, the ball getting lodged in the fence. I mean, there's so many things, so many plays, so many, I mean, what you can't even fathom the opportunities that were presented to them and that they were unable to cash in. And can this team come back from something like this? Sometimes with teams it's hard because look at Seattle. And they won a Super Bowl the year before. But when you had the most boneheaded play call of all time, Pete Carroll, just give the ball to Marshawn Lynch and he passed it to Malcolm Butler. That stays with you. Now, I understand there wasn't a play like that where, let's say there was a boneheaded base running move. All right, you can say Barger, but he was on second. There wasn't anything like that, or let's say a Billy Buckner play that's going to stick with you to say, like, that was the outcome. Maybe the kind of Falefa, if he was off the bag, because they're going to look at that if he was just a split second late, or I should say early at the bag, that the outcome would have been different. But as a fan base, how do you get over this? You would have to literally win 3 straight World Series, or you can win next year. But my point is that even if you won 3 straight World Series, if anybody brings up, oh, but 2025, you could have had 4, that's going to bring up a bad memory because you're going to think about that and say, yes, we could have had 4 World Series. And the Dodgers, you could talk about their payroll, you could talk about whatever, they still won. And listen, they won in a fashion that I don't even know how you top when you think about it. I mean, unless you're down 3-0 in the series and you come all the way back to tie the series, and in Game 7 you're down 5-0 and you come back to win 6-5 in dramatic fashion. I mean, that's the only way they could top what you just witnessed. Because beating the Rays in 2020 when you won in 6, and beating the Yankees when you were up 3-0 and you won in 5, great, you celebrate, it's fantastic. But this one, you savor more because of what Miguel Rojas did, because of what Yoshinobu Yamamoto did, because of what this Dodger team did, the move that Dave Roberts, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And when you're a Blue Jay fan, it's quite the opposite, where you're sick. There's no other way to put it. You're just sick. And that's your baseball. And now we can look forward to new managers, the Blake Buteras of the world going to Washington. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. 33 years of age, I might add. To think I have a son that's older than a major league manager, which is quite hard to even digest. And now we have all of an off-season, before I move on to football, an off-season that is certainly going to be very intriguing because when you look at the calendar, we're now 14, let me do the math correctly. We're now 13 months away, a little less than that, from Baseball Armageddon and the collective bargaining agreement expiring. And this offseason, if they're going to try to at least come to the table with a start of a conversation, hopefully they're going to do that as soon as possible. Because with the way this offseason may shake down as far as free agency, trades, etc., it could be very few and far between because owners are not looking past 2026. So something to keep in mind as we move it along, where in 2 weeks we'll have the award ceremony for Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year, Cy Young, and MVP. All right, now let me turn my attention to the NFL. As now, for the football fan, it's going to be pretty much football that's going to dominate from now over the next 3 months of February. So you don't have to worry about baseball unless something crazy happens with the CBA or a big-time free agent signing or trade or anything like that. But we know football is going to carry us not only through the month of November, past Thanksgiving, into Christmas, the New Year, obviously all of January until early February where we'll have Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara there, Levi Stadium, which will be, I believe, 3 months from this coming Saturday. So it's something that we'll look forward to as we move it along. But NFL, the theme for yesterday, and you had some crazy games and weird wins and things along those lines. But the three themes I'm going to come away with. And the obvious I'm going to put last. I'm not talking Bills Chiefs right now. I'm not. And if you listen to the podcast Thursday, you'll understand why. But for yesterday, we may have a new division that is not only up for grabs, but could be in competition for the best one in the sport. And that's the NFC North. Because you want to talk about a turn of events yesterday? You had Minnesota going into Detroit, beating the Lions, and J.J. McCarthy, who, remember, Carson Wentz out with that, I believe he had shoulder surgery. And for J.J. McCarthy, who had been out pretty much since week 2, to step in and see where he would lie as far as picking up his team. And the Vikings, of course, have been in and out throughout the course of the year. But McCarthy, all right, not great as far as the percentage, but absolutely made throws and made some key plays when he absolutely had to, especially early on in the game. But for the Vikings, that was an enormous win because it keeps them in the mix there in the division. Now, they are, I believe, 2-0 because they have not played the Packers as of yet. They beat Chicago on a Monday night. No, as a matter of fact, yes, they beat Chicago on a Monday night there in week 2 and winning this game. And even though they're in last place, but they are 4-4 and they do have an advantage there in the NFC North. And that's a bad loss for the Lions because the Lions, listen, we know that they weren't going to have anything comparable to what they had last year, but they have not been crisp. They have played well at times, but now when you look at this Lion team at 5-3, it's almost as if you don't know which Lion team you're going to get. And for them to come off of a game where they beat the Buccaneers and played well in the game, and prior to that, they lost to the Chiefs there in Kansas City, and here it is now, they lost 2 out of 3, and even though the Lions, I believe, are still a formidable team there, not only just in the division, but also in the conference, but now you have to wonder whether or not psyche, if there's some fragility there. Maybe they took the Vikings for granted, knowing that McCarthy was coming back, that, we'll just tee off on him, and I don't know. But to me, if that was in Minnesota, all right, on the road, not an easy game, fine. You lost at home. And not to say you guys are invincible at home, but that was a game that I felt that you should have won going in. But obviously that wasn't the case. So now you have that to deal with. And then you have the Bears, who I understand it's more of an indictment on the Bengal defense. I get that. But the Bears going to Cincinnati, and here they were, tooth and nail, back and forth, with 20-some odd seconds to go, whatever it was. They're down 42-41, and even though they all they needed was a field goal to get themselves in field goal range, but for Caleb Williams to find Colston Loveland, the former Michigan tight end, there in the seam, and he goes right past a couple of defenders and tacklers, right into the end zone. What was that, 58 yards? And it was just mind-boggling. Like, how does that happen? We usually see these teams play back on defense. I understand they're going to play more up because it's not as if they need a touchdown in that scenario. But that was one where you couldn't even comprehend. Because that was a scenario where I understand these kickers are, chip shots are 55-yard field goals. But for them to let that tight end not only get them to the middle of the field, all right, fine, that can happen, but a couple of tacklers he avoids and then just zooms right past the secondary and into the end zone. If you're a Bengal fan, you're sick to your stomach. My heart goes out to Brian, Risa, and Jai. But, and now the Bears, with that miraculous win, put themselves in a position where they're 5-3. And then how do you explain the Green Bay Packers? Could somebody do that for me, please? Here are the Packers, similar to what the Bears did in Cincinnati yesterday. They beat up on a Steeler defense, and there's more of an indictment on that Steeler defense. But now they host Carolina, a team that, all right, respectable from a standpoint of they're 4-3. Dave Canales, their head coach, making some strides here, especially from the latter part of last year going into this year. And the Panthers, even though they're not a team that they're going to be reckoned with by any stretch, but they go into Lambeau and not only win a game, but led from in front pretty much from jump. I understand that the Packers got a field goal to start off, and especially in the second quarter. But after getting that touchdown there, where Rico Dowdle now all of a sudden is looking like Earl Campbell. And I'm sure the Cowboys now, maybe they rue the day that they let him go. But the Panthers, who I understand, this isn't the Julius Peppers, Thomas Davis, Brenson Buckner. This isn't the Panther defense of yesteryear, Luke Kuechly, etc. But for them to go to Lambeau and to get a field goal, 49 yards at the gun, and steal a game from the Packers. And Jordan Love, again, I don't want to just put this all on him, but this offense is such scatterbrain and in and out, and he could have the 360 yards and the touchdowns against Pittsburgh, but against a good defense, and maybe they took Carolina lightly. Similar to the Lions with the Vikings. But boy, I tell you, you can't be happy if you're a Packer fan today. Because think about the two losses that you have on your ledger. Now, you tied with the Cowboys. All right, fine. We know the Cowboys, at least they could score. But you lost in Cleveland, and you lost out on the Carolina. And all right, you can say, well, Carolina came into the game at 500, and now they left at 5-4. All right, but they did nothing in the game other than Dowdle, who I understand moving the chains, trying to keep the time of possession at least somewhat respectable against the Packers on the road. But that's not supposed to happen. And Bryce Young was 11 for 20 with an interception at 102 yards. When you look at the stat sheet, you're thinking to yourself, how the hell did they win this game? And as it was, it's not as if they, now I understand Packers had a couple turnovers, but it's not as if they had the turnover ratio 4-1 in favor of the Panthers. So that's one. And again, I didn't follow this game that much. I mean, I was watching on my phone, not the game, but just what's happening. But I couldn't believe when I saw that final score how Carolina goes in there and wins the game. So now, to bring it all together, the NFC North is now looking like a division where it could be competitive. You could have multiple teams coming out as far as the playoffs go. And right now, it is a toss-up. But what helps Green Bay in this particular case is that tie to Dallas. Because if they had the same amount of wins at the end of the regular season, whether that be against the Lions, which we would expect, or dare I even say, maybe the Chicago Bears when it's all said and done. Because think about it. The Bears right now are a half game behind the Packers for first place. And did they not play early this year? I don't think they have played just yet. I should know that off the top of my head. They have not. And in fact, they're going to play on December 7th, and quite possibly the 21st is to be determined because of flexing. So they still have 2 games against them. And also, they have 2 games against the Vikings, Green Bay. So the only game that they've had in the division so far in their first 8 has been against the Lions, and that was week 1. So even though you could think that the Packers, but they're still in first place, they still have a ton of games against the teams in their own division. So this could be a battle royale to the very end to whether or not who's going to come out on top there in the NFC North. So to me, that was the theme yesterday based on what developed with all those teams. So that was number 1. Number 2 is Carolina. Now listen, I don't expect them to do anything big this year, but they're making strides. Whether it's smoke and mirrors, whether they're doing it with scotch tape and bubble gum and some crazy glue, all right, fine. But when you wake up this morning and you see where they stack, they're a game over 500 here, and they're past the halfway point of the season. Now, what does this mean for them? Are they going to make it to the playoffs? Are they going to be a fringe playoff team? I don't think that's going to be the case. But you got to think that something's brewing there in Carolina to think that this team, as of right this very moment, is, let's call it we see it, they're a fringe playoff team. And let me pull up the records here real quick. And I understand we still got a ways to go, people. But as it is right now, the Carolina Panthers are 9th in the conference. And funny enough, the Lions are 7th. which goes to show you that the NFC is a little bit more formidable than we thought going into this year. But Carolina, I'm sure they're going to have everybody thinking and believing like, hey, why not us? So that's good for them, and that was number 2. And number 3, listen, Bills Chiefs, we've seen this movie before. We've been down this road several times with them, and I believe they've beaten them now 5 straight in the regular season. But if, and right now it's looking like a big if, they do face off in the playoffs, to me that's when it really matters. Because despite the fact that Josh Allen threw 3 touchdowns, and Patrick Mahomes for him was just god-awful. What was he, 15 for 34? Didn't have anything of a semblance of what we've seen with Patrick Mahomes in the past. But if you're a Bill fan, I'm sure you're probably like, hey, we won. And yeah, maybe no surprise it was in our building, but you can't get too geeked up over that. That's just me. And even if they won a thriller or a classic, still, and I understand it came down to a Hail Mary at the end, but I mean, really, Bills, Chiefs, let's see if this happens in January. And right now, that's probably not going to be the case, because when you look at the Chiefs as of right this very moment, that loss, 5-4, they're not going to be a 1 seed. You could put that to bed. Unless everybody comes back to the pack and somehow, some way, let's say with 5 or even 6 losses, they're a 1 seed, and I don't think that's going to be the case. But right now, Kansas City is an 8 seed in the AFC. And past the halfway point. Now, what does this mean for them grand scheme of things? I think they're going to make it to the postseason. I'd be shocked, even if you get to the final 4 weeks where they're hovering on the outside looking in. But yeah, I can't get too wrapped up in the Bill-Chief game yesterday and what that means for the grand scheme of things. And Buffalo right now, remember, the Patriots have the tiebreaker. They played more games and they're 7-2, where Buffalo right now is a 5 seed. So that's where you're at as far as the 3 themes of yesterday. As far as the weekend on a whole, I'm sure you saw Cam Little with that 68-yard field goal that he had, which, if you remember, in the preseason, he had a 70-yarder against Pittsburgh, and then yesterday hits a bomb of a kick, which topped the 66-yarder that Justin Tucker hit, what was that, 3 or 4 years ago, I believe? That was in Detroit, and it actually hit the upright before going over the crossbar, or hit the crossbar before going through. Where this one cleared the crossbar. So for Jacksonville, who right now has that final spot in the AFC at 5-3, but Jacksonville with a big win against Vegas. And I don't want to go there because Vegas, we know, is going to have a long year. But as far as some of the other games, I know the Chargers win in Tennessee. No big whoop there. We know how bad Tennessee is. San Francisco, 34-24. And they pretty much were in cruise control in that game. And we know the Giants are compromised offensively, as both Cam Scatterboo and Malik Neighbors are out. And let's see, Pittsburgh beating Indy. I know I would probably save that for last, and I said it Thursday, watch them beat them, because with the defense being ridiculed from coast to coast and them having to redeem themselves after just being embarrassed there offensively there for the whole world to see on Sunday night. Now, they forced 6 turnovers, which helped. And that's what's weird about the Steelers team. When you look at 2 of their 5 wins, one came against the Colts, 7-1, and the other, granted week 3, but it was against New England. But thanks to 5 turnovers, especially 2 inside the 5, right there as the Patriots were knocking on the doorstep, Patriots could have won that game as well. But Pittsburgh, again, it's going to be all predicated on their defense. You know, the offense is going to do just enough. And they got a big turnover there at, at 7-7, where they got the ball and they pushed it into the end zone at 14-7. And next thing you know, they were going away. I mean, the game wasn't as close as the score indicated, 27-20. They were up 27-10 at one point. So the Steelers were able to survive there at Three Rivers or at Acrisure. I can't, to me, it's Heinz Field. But anyway, Rams beat Tyler Shough in his first start. No surprise there. Washington, they're having the year from hell. Now Jaden Daniels, excuse me. I got it backwards. Jaden Daniels, not Dayton. Come on, JAYREELZ, let's get to it. Out with a dislocated elbow. Now, it's not his throwing arm, but still, that is an injury that they could not afford. And their season, is look like it's going up in smoke. They're 3-6. They've lost more games this year than they lost all of last year. And you could even say they lost 6 games all of last year, including the NFC Championship. And I know you're going to hear a lot of the parallels and the whispers about Jaden Daniels and RG3. Unfair. Can't go there. But, of course, the Commander fans are going to look at it that way. The promise that RG3 had in his rookie year. And then, remember, he got hurt in that playoff game. Was that game against Seattle? Yeah, in that wild card game where he went off and then he came back in the game and he re-injured his knee. And that was the beginning of the end for RG3. So you have that going on in the nation's capital. CJ Stroud gets knocked out with a concussion, but the Broncos survived. They win 18-15. I didn't really follow this game closely, but Denver keeps their record at 7-2 as they move it along. And then, yeah, Seattle beating up on Washington. And I know I'm at Seattle. I slept on them a little bit, but do I expect them to be there at the end? I don't know. It's a very competitive division, as you know, with the Rams and Niners, and they face off next Sunday, which to me, that is the marquee game. And that's a big game for the Rams, too. They need to win that game just to avoid the head-to-head tiebreaker, because remember, they lost to them earlier this year in SoFi. But that is your NFL. And I know you understand you have a ton of these injuries that have taken place here. I mentioned about Jaden Daniels, no Travis Hunter, as he's on IR, and he hasn't had a big season anyway, the two-way player there out of Colorado. And the NFL Week 9 comes to a conclusion tonight with Arizona at Dallas. No thanks, I'll pass. And then tomorrow you have the trade deadline. And you had a big trade there today where the Eagles, they've been wheeling and dealing. They traded for Michael Carter there, the defensive player there for the cornerback to be a slot guy from the Jets. They also brought in Jair Alexander, the former Packer, who did not cut it as a Raven. So they brought him in over the weekend, and then they traded for Jalen Phillips, a linebacker. And you even had to get Brandon Graham out of retirement. So the Eagles are doing whatever it takes to try to get themselves back to a Super Bowl. And we would still think of them as the front runner there in the NFC. But they're not resting on their laurels. And kudos to Howie Roseman, their GM, for doing whatever it takes to get themselves in a position to get back to a Super Bowl. So that you certainly have to give up to their front office. But other than that, you have not seen a lot of trades. I thought we would see a few more over the past 2 or 3 days, but you haven't. But I'm sure that's going to pick up big time, because for teams that are trying to jockey for position, especially the Steelers, are going to look for a wide receiver here. You would think Jalen Waddle, a guy that maybe they have their eye on, considering that they've made a lot of deals with the Dolphins over the years. This past offseason, to Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith for Minka Fitzpatrick. But I would think there's going to be some moving and shaking here over the course of the next 24 hours. And while I'm at it, let me see real quick. Has anything come down the pike besides Jalen Phillips going to Philadelphia? No, not as of yet. I do not see that. So that's the situation there with the trade deadline. So definitely stay locked into the channel on YouTube at JAYREELZ. I'll put up some shorts. I believe the trade deadline is 4 p.m. tomorrow. So we'll have that. And then you have Chris Greer out. Speaking of the Dolphins, out as GM. Now they're going to keep Mike McDaniel the coach for the remainder of the year, but the GM who had been there since 2016 and part of the organization since 2000, out in Miami, which is no surprise. So it's been a long time coming. He's actually had 9 lives there down in Miami. So he's done there as the GM of the Dolphins. And then as far as the college football goes, you had 2 big upsets. First off, Miami, you would think their opportunity to get to a college football playoff is in severe jeopardy. They lose to SMU. I mean, Mario Cristobal even mentioned the self-inflicted mistakes and errors that they had, including the terrible, unsportsmanlike conduct on the final drive for SMU to push the game into overtime. I mean, just a terrible job by Miami. Maybe they just took them too lightly. Maybe they thought that, we'll just go in there and steamroll them. And obviously they got steamrolled to where SMU... And listen, it happens. And that's what's great about college football now with the extended playoff. And then you also had Georgia Tech lose. Talk about steamroll. 538 yards. there. That was one where obviously I didn't see that one coming. And similar with Miami and SMU. But for NC State just to beat them up and run roughshod over them, Georgia Tech, that was a very bad loss if you ask me. But other than that, throughout the weekend, I know Vandy lost to Texas. Arch Manning comes back from that concussion. So Vandy takes a hit there. Who knows what's going to happen with them with the college football playoff. And then Georgia had to survive there in the swamp against Florida as they got a touchdown there with about 5 minutes to go. What was it? I believe it was a 36-yard touchdown run by Chauncey Bowens to put that game from 2017 to 24-20 as Georgia survives and hangs on. So your top, and we'll get into more college football. Obviously, it's a big month for college football as we move it along. Here are your top teams. It's Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, Alabama, Georgia is your top 5, followed by Oregon, Ole Miss, BYU, Texas Tech, and Notre Dame as those 2 teams move into the top 10. Then Oklahoma, Virginia, Texas moves now to 13, Louisville, Vandy, and then Georgia Tech. And then you have Miami at 18. If you want to go further down the line, maybe not. But I will be on top of the college football. Not that I haven't been on top of it, but even more so now with baseball gone and everything's going to be football-centric. So we'll have that coming down the pike in the final few weeks here of the college football regular season. All right, now let me turn my attention quickly. NBA, NHL, this will be a 2-pronged attack. Now, of course, I'll separate them, but this will be rather quick. A lot of injuries in the NBA here as of late, where Anthony Edwards out with a hamstring as they play the Nets in Brooklyn tonight, and the Nets 0-5. Well, I believe 0-6 now. You talk about the Royal Rumble for who's going to be the worst team in the NBA this year. It's going to be Brooklyn or New Orleans. And they're both, they have not gotten a win yet. They're both 0-6. Who knows where they're going to end up. But, man, actually New Orleans is worse when you talk about point differential. I think their point differential is almost 19 points a game, where the Nets are around 15-8, almost 16 points. Oh, you talk about long seasons by the Bayou and in the Kings County. So with the T-Wolves in town, and you're not going to see Anthony Edwards play. He's done with a hammy, or out with a hammy, not done. 2 weeks dating back to the early part of last week. And then Trae Young, ironically, hurt himself in Brooklyn with a knee sprain. He's going to be out 4 weeks, so the Hawks are trying to find their way in this early part of the season. Not going to be out with their quote-unquote best player. Anthony Davis has a calf strain. No shock there. Out a couple of games. I don't know when he's going to return. As Dallas played in Mexico against the Pistons. I forgot who won that game. That was a game that was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, where the Mavericks, they... Pull that up here. Oh, was that 2 nights ago? Maybe I got my dates mixed up. Was that Saturday? Yes, Dallas did lose to Detroit there in the game in Mexico. And I would think that, I think it was just a one-shot deal. I think it was a game where Dallas was staying down there for the weekend to play another game in Mexico City. So, and we know his history with injuries, Anthony Davis, so that is a blow for a Dallas team also trying to navigate without Kyrie and implementing Cooper Flagg into the mix. And what the hell's going on with Ja Morant? Could somebody get this kid, sit him down and say, son, what is happening? We know about his injuries, which obviously you can't control, the shoulder and among many others. But with the gun incident and the suspensions and the maturity saying, no, I got to be better. And I understand he's saying all the right things. But now, suspended 1 game, conduct detrimental to the team. I guess he had this back and forth with the coach. And I understand he's a young coach, Thomas Iasalo. And for that to be seen in front of his teammates, and we know he's the face of that organization, that is a terrible job by him to actually have him to be sit down and suspended for a game, considering everything that transpired with this kid dating back a few years ago, and how, I'm not going to say he hasn't gotten it, but when is he going to get it is more the question of, come on, son, let's get it together. And we know the type of player he is, explosive, obviously dynamic, but if he continues to go down this path, I mean, Is he going to be a Grizzly for much longer? That we'll have to wait and see, but maybe he's trying to get himself out of Memphis, and I'm not saying that that's the case, but who knows? But that's just a mess there with him and the team, etc. And then the Spurs also lost for the first time yesterday, where the Suns of all teams beat them, and they also lost the number 2 pick overall, Dylan Harper, to a calf injury, so we'll have to see what's happening there. But the Spurs finally lose, and the only team that is undefeated in the sport with no finals hangover are the Oklahoma City Thunder. 7-0 to start their season, flying and riding high, and you would think another 1 seed in their future, and obviously with them to defend their title, that is one that I'm sure everybody in that area is looking forward to. And as I said earlier with the Dodgers, a dynasty in the making? We shall see. But that's what's happening with the NBA. I mean, other than that, you don't really have much. Let me just pull up the standings real quick to see any streaks, anything crazy going on. Yeah, we know about the Nets. We know about the... Yeah, no, that's nothing else to really unpack. Oh, Lakers have played well, and Luka's played well too. So kudos, no LeBron yet. That we know. As far as the schedule for this week, yeah, I don't think there are any games of note. But tonight, Dallas at Houston, Lakers in Portland, Miami at the Clippers. Miami's lost to the Lakers there. I believe it was yesterday. Milwaukee and Indiana is your rematch of your first round game last year. Then you have tomorrow, Philly at Chicago, who Philly lost to the Celtics in their first game there on Friday night. And the Celtics got waxed by the Rockets the following night. Oklahoma City at LA to play the Clippers tomorrow night. Phoenix, Golden State, Charlotte, New Orleans. Not much going in. And Wednesday, Philly at Cleveland. And your NBC Peacock games tomorrow are Orlando at Atlanta. And then Oklahoma, LA, that's NBC Peacock. And then, actually, Minnesota's staying in town, which makes sense because Minnesota played the Knicks at the Garden on Wednesday. And the Knicks have hit a bit of a speed bump here recently. Although they did win last night against the Bulls, but they won. They were 2-0, then they lost 3 in a row, and then they won last night. So Minnesota will stay in town the early part of this week as they play the Knicks on Wednesday. Houston, Memphis, New Orleans, Dallas, Miami at Denver, San Antonio at the Lakers, Oklahoma City, Portland, Golden State, Sacramento. Those are your games so far the early part of the week before we reconnect on Thursday. And as far as the NHL goes, I know, I'm even afraid to say this right now because it is early and I have to bring it up. I get it's a meaningless, I don't want to say meaningless, but it's a trivial, or it'll be part of a trivia question, but you got to like what you see. Maybe I don't even love what you see if you're an Islander fan in Matthew Schaefer. In 12 games, he has 10 points, 5 goals, 5 assists, and he had his first multi-goal game last night against Columbus, and they won a big game. They had 2 goals late, one in the final minute, and then another one they tacked on there with 30-something seconds to go as they beat the Blue Jackets. But for Schaefer to get 2 goals in a game, he's the youngest defenseman in NHL history to do so, who surpassed Bobby Orr as the youngest defenseman to score more than 1 goal in a game. And I've watched a couple of Islander games. Smooth skater. Even the coach, Todd McClellan of the Sharks, he is the coach of the Sharks, right? Didn't he take over for, what's his name? But Todd McClellan, he even came out and said that this guy has the makings. Dare I even say this? No, the Red Wings, that's right. He was once upon a time, but when Detroit played the Islanders a couple of weeks ago, this is where he made the mention, so my apologies. McClellan did, I believe he did man the bench of the Sharks once upon a time, but for McClellan to say that this guy could be Paul Coffey-esque, if he could score 48 goals in a year, which Paul Coffey did, which is the NHL record, then he is going to have a Hall of Fame career. But that's a good thing that the Islanders can root for, considering that the team doesn't really have that guy. Yeah, the Bo Horvats of the world and the Matthew Barzels, but knowing they have Schneider and a defenseman, an offensive-minded defenseman who can play well defensively, that is a guy that at least the Islander fans can look forward to. But real quick, as far as the sport overall, you had some signings there. I know Jacob Markstrom for the Devils, a goalie who's a big part of their team, signed a 2-year extension. And Martin Nikas, the former Hurricane player, 8-year extension there with Colorado. Colorado has the best record in the sport, but they're 7-1-5. A lot of overtime losses, which is weird. But that's the NHL for you in that regard. And you got to like what you see if you're in the Atlantic. The Lightning have played a lot better. Remember, they started off at like 1-4-3, I believe it was, or 1-4-2. And now with them winning 5 in a row, they've now put themselves in a position where they're 4 points behind the Canadiens and 2 points behind They're actually 4 points behind both the Canadiens and Red Wings in the Atlantic. So they've turned things around where Toronto, sluggish start, same for Florida for that matter. Although they're still within striking distance, they're only 5 points behind the top spot, but certainly not playing along the lines of what we've seen here over the last few years. And a lot of balance there in the NHL with parity and teams that have been good. And yes, you do have your dregs. I know Calgary's gone off to a terrible start. San Jose's played a lot better since they were the last team to actually record a win in the NHL. But we'll get into more NHL as we move it along, as you know. And your schedule this week for the National Hockey League. Tonight, Pittsburgh at Toronto, Edmonton at St. Louis, Chicago, Seattle, Vancouver, Nashville. Tomorrow, Utah, Buffalo, Philly, Montreal, Boston at the Islanders, Carolina at the Rangers, Edmonton and Dallas. I believe that's their first appearance since the Western Conference Final. Nashville, Minnesota, Tampa, Colorado. There's your rematch of the 22 final. Detroit at Vegas, Florida, Anaheim, Winnipeg at LA. And then Wednesday, Utah, Toronto, St. Louis, Washington, Columbus, Calgary, Chicago, Vancouver, San Jose, Seattle. Yes. So Wednesday, not too much. Tuesday, a little bit better. As we move it along here in this NHL season. And other than that, any other news and notes, let me just check. That'll do it, my good people. Another episode just about in the books. As always, thank you so much for passing by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is to have to say about what goes on in the toy department of life called sports. And if you haven't done so, please, people, I implore you, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. Slowly but surely getting there. I'm at 746, trying to get to 1,000 and beyond. The little engine that could, this independent podcast. Full-time content creator, people. Yes, this is my full-time job, and I'm not earning anything at this present moment. Yeah, I'm trying to hustle on the side, not just with side hustle stuff, but other things in pertaining to the podcast, to the live stream that I put out. Podcast, as you know, Monday and Thursdays. The live stream, I have 2 on Monday and Thursday, a little podcast pregame, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. And then I have my bonafide weekly Wednesday live stream, 12 noon Eastern time, as I babble about what's happening in the world of sports. So again, and also have some lifestyle content on the channel, which I know has still been in the works, editing amongst many other things that I'm doing. I'm a one-man operation, people. I wear many hats. So sometimes those hats wear thin, where one day I have to concentrate more on just the communication, engagement standpoint of it, to the email, following up with sponsor standpoint of it, to the marketing, merch. There's a bunch of things. And that's all the smoke I want. But again, I am only one person. I don't have a team. So if you can, please support the channel in any way, shape, or form. Just hit that subscribe button. I would sincerely appreciate it. And if you want to hit me up with a question, comment, or suggestion, you can do so at the following: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, or JAYREELZ on Instagram. JAYREELZ1, just a number, on Twitter, and the old-fashioned way to JAYREELZpodcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood, it's in the DNA. This is why I quit my job 21 months ago to pursue this full-time. And yes, I understand not much has happened. Even if I rub 2 nickels together, it's not as if I'm getting $100. But your boy's trying. And things are going to have to start to change. I'm reworking my schedule and rewiring my habits, everything, to get to that point, as we're now less than 2 months away from a new year. So for those who have stuck with me, my day ones, or if this is your first day, I appreciate you. I thank you. Spread the word. Take a screenshot. Send it to your family, friends, foes, frenemies on social media. Tag me in it. I'll be more than happy to tack that onto my social media accounts as well. Because as long as I'm sitting in front of this microphone and camera, I promise you, I will deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything That happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ podcast, on the flip, baby.